Skeptic Zone, a miracle of technology. A universe of reason, the Skeptic Zone.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, show number 45 for the 28th of August 2009. Richard Saunders here with you once again from Sydney, Australia, just because I'm just about to get on a plane with Dr. Rachie, our good friend Steve Roberts, the Australian Skeptics UFO expert, and we're heading for DragonCon. DragonCon in Atlanta, Georgia. More about that later in the show. Now, this week's show's a bit of a mixture. I've decided to mix up the format a little bit. We're going to kick off with Dr. Rachie Reports because she hasn't been on for a little while. That's followed by the Think Tank, then a very important interview with Leanne Rux from Western Australia by Kylie Sturgis, where she talks about philosophon, philosophy and critical thinking for children. So without any further ado, let's get stuck into this episode of the Skeptic Zone.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachel Dunlop.
Hello everyone and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. On today's episode I present a story of a link that's been discovered between the famous microbiologist Louis Pasteur, Victoria Bitter beer, and the rabbit plague in Australia. But first up, I came across this gem of a clip when I was researching the recent gaffe about homeopathic vaccination on 9am's David and Kim morning television program. For those of you who don't know this story, 9am is a morning magazine-style program which was interviewing Dr. Nikolai Petrovsky, who is one of the developers of the swine flu vaccine. In the interest of journalistic balance, they also had a gentleman by the name of Isaac Golden, who is a self-confessed expert on homeopathic vaccination. Now, we don't expect our morning TV shows to be particularly knowledgeable when it comes to medicine or medical issues, but we do expect them to do some research. Unfortunately, it seems that David and Kim don't seem to learn. Here's a clip I came across from 2006, which made it to our media watchdog program called Media Watch. It's David talking about a placebo.
Some of these guys were given a placebo, correct? I don't really understand what a placebo is, but it seems to have saved them. And wouldn't it make sense that every time a trial like this takes place, that there is a placebo on hand?
Channel 10's David Rain making a bit of a deal of himself on morning TV. Hello and welcome to Media Watch. I'm Monica Attard. Well, David was talking about the English clinical drug trial that went terribly wrong when 6 men suffered multiple organ failure and nearly died. Doctors are still baffled, but not quite as baffled as David Rain. Fortunately, there was a doctor on hand to sort it out.
A placebo is just an inactive agent. So it's a
pretend drug.
It's a pretend drug. So it could be sterile saline, for example, with no active agent in it.
I was thinking it was a cure of some sort.
No.
And now on to the fascinating and intriguing story of a link between the famous microbiologist Louis Pasteur, the rabbit plague in Sydney, the father of Federation in Australia, Sir Henry Parkes, and a $10 million prize. This story was uncovered by historian Stephen Dando Collins and is described in his recent book, Pasteur's Gambits, which deals with a connection between the famous and revered Pasteur of the famous Pasteur Institute and Australia. Now, of course, Louis Pasteur discovered the process of pasteurization, which is now widely used in food preparation, but he also discovered, amongst other things, a cure for rabies and anthrax. Pasteurization made him famous because it enables food products to have a much longer half-life and then make them safer for consumption, particularly when they are stored or transported. But back to the rabbit plague. It was on Christmas Day in 1859 that a couple of dozen wild European rabbits were offloaded from a ship destined for a property near Geelong in Victoria. And as the saying goes, the rabbits bred like rabbits and very soon were overrunning Victoria, South Australia and New South Wales, and encroaching on farmland, crops and grazing land. Now, the Premier of New South Wales at the time, Sir Henry Parkes, decided to set up a commission to deal with this rabbit problem. At this time, there was a large group of rabbit trappers. There were people who sold barbed wire to stop the rabbits from getting in. And there were those known as scalpers, who all had a vested interest in the rabbits staying in Australia. But despite this, Henry saw that the problem was beyond the rabbit trappers and scalpers, so he decided to set up a worldwide competition to find a biological solution to rid the country of the rabbit plague. The prize was set at £25,000, which is the equivalent of $10 million in today's standards. Now, at the time in France, Louis Pasteur wanted to set up the Pasteur Institute, but he wanted to do it with independent funds, not government money. He heard about the competition and thought he'd found a solution to the rabbit plague in the form of chicken cholera. He'd done some experiments where he had taken chicken droppings and fed them to rabbits and noticed that they died very quickly. So Louis decided to send his reluctant protege, his nephew Adrien Loire, to Australia to claim the prize. Louis was keen for him to get to Australia, win the competition and return to France within about 4 to 6 weeks. But when Adrien arrived, he discovered that as part of the competition, he had to demonstrate that the solution worked for 12 months before the money was to be handed over. So this meant he needed some cash to tide him over whilst in Australia. Now, before he had left France, he had been to a little brewery in Copenhagen, which is now the Carlsberg Brewery, to teach the brewers the process of pasteurisation. This technique was originally designed for wine, but French winemakers were not interested in using it because they thought it would affect the taste. But in the case of beer at Carlsberg, this enabled them to ship their beer all over the world and have it arrive fresh. So once in Melbourne, Adrien met up with the owners of the Victoria Bitter Brewery, who asked him to teach them the process as well, for which they would pay him the equivalent of $100,000. Of course, Adrien was more than happy to teach them pasteurisation, and this may be part of the reason why VB or Victoria Bitter is now the biggest selling beer in Australia. So now Adrien set about winning the prize for the rabbit plague. But he was to come up against several hurdles. Firstly, the rabbit scalpers and fencers who sat on the judging panel were not interested in snuffing out the rabbit plague. But also the locals were not happy about him running a lab full of biohazards and scary germs. But Henry Parkes had a solution to this. He allowed Adrien Loire to set up a research facility in Sydney Harbour on an island called Rod Island, which is located near Rozelle. Now, this didn't completely allay the fears of the locals, so a fine mesh was also hung over the facility to stop the germs getting out. Now, despite the fact that Henry Parkes was very supportive of Pasteur and Loire's science, their biological solution was never introduced. In Australia today, we still have a rabbit plague. Australian scientists from the CSIRO were asked to come up with a biological solution in the 1950s. This came in the form of a virus called myxomatosis and was initially very successful. It killed off about 99% of the rabbit population, but soon rabbits developed immunity and then began to breed again. So in the early 1990s, the CSIRO began testing another virus called the Khaleesi virus on Wardang Island off the coast of South Australia. But after only 6 months of testing on a rabbit population, the virus escaped to the mainland, most likely on insects. It was then officially released in 1996 and was initially very effective. But, just like myxomatosis, rabbits have become less susceptible over time to Khaleesi virus. Recent reports of an explosion in rabbit numbers suggest the problem costs Australia around $200 million a year, from lost crops and pasture land. One wonders whether we would still have this problem if Adrien Loire had been allowed to develop his chicken cholera idea back in the 1800s. Stephen Dando Collins' book is called Pasteur's Gambit, Louis Pasteur, the Australasian Rabbit Plague and a $10 million Prize, and is published by Random House. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
Hey, Phil Plait here from the Bad Astronomy blog, and I'm also president of the James Randi Educational Foundation. Now, if you've read pretty much anything I have ever written, you know that I am a pretty big dork for both astronomy and science fiction, and I'm thrilled to be able to combine the two by co-hosting a star party this year at DragonCon in Atlanta, Georgia. My co-host is going to be podcaster and fellow astronomer and a dear friend of mine, Pamela Gay. We're doing this Thursday, September 3rd at 7 p.m. at the Bradley Observatory at Agnes Scott College in Atlanta, Georgia. This is the night before DragonCon starts. This is in honor of Jeff Medcalf, who used to blog under the name Blue Collar Scientist. He was a skeptic and an astronomer and a friend of mine, and he died last year of liver cancer. All the proceeds from this event are going to the American Cancer Society, so this is a great event for a great cause. It's being sponsored by the Atlanta Skeptics, so all you need to do is go to atlantaskeptics.com, and in the upper right-hand corner is a link that says Star Party. Click that, you get all the information you need. So again, atlantaskeptics.com, click on the Star Party link. We're going to be looking at Jupiter and the moon and talking about astronomy, and it's really going to be a good time, and it really is for an honestly good cause. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
We can start now.
Yes, we can start the think tank now.
Are you sure?
I think so. Okay, ready?
And from our favourite club just down the street, it's cheers and welcome to the Think Tank.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Oh, that's better. That's homeopathic water, I'll have you know.
Not even that.
It's invisible.
It's great. And yes, welcome to the Think Tank once again. And Dr. Rachie, I must say thank you very much for steering the old Think Tank last week.
Oh, you're welcome.
As you drop your...
Nobody noticed that.
No one can see on the podcast that
I
she
just dropped my
dropped her pen. Now, joining me tonight on the Think Tank, of course, is Dr. Rachie, and thank you for your Dr. Rachie reports.
Oh, you're welcome, Richard. I hope you enjoyed it this week as a little bit of light relief. It was supposed to be anyway.
It was great. Thanks again. And we have Jason joining us again. Hello, Jason.
Greetings, everybody.
Where's your
My where?
Yeah, the sheep. The sheep.
The sheep. That's at home. Unfortunately.
Sleeping.
He's left his sheep at home. He's sleeping.
Your
He's
attention,
sleeping.
please, members and guests. The next courtesy bus will depart in 5 minutes' time, going to Canterbury, Campsie, Croydon Park and Burwood. That's the next courtesy bus, 5 minutes' time, going to Canterbury, Campsie, Croydon Park and Burwood. Thank you.
Everybody's been missing the announcements, so just make sure it came in.
We're just making sure. Well, that's my bus. We better hurry up. 5 minutes. Okay, let's go quick. Diane, hello, Diane.
How are you, Richard?
I'm actually, you know what? I'm close to being as well and better as I have in a very long time, which pleases me knowing. Almost got my ears fixed up, you know, a little, almost
Glad to
there.
hear.
But I'm feeling good. I've been exercising again, and I think I've beaten the old skeptic flu.
Well, Richard, you have to be ready soon. Why is that?
Why is that?
Why do you have to be well?
Because we're going to see lots of very famous people at DragonCon.
We are.
DragonCon, yes.
In fact, Richard, this time next week,
Yeah.
we will
Be jet lagged out of our heads.
But we will be in Atlanta, won't we? Atlanta, Georgia.
This time next week? No.
No, we'll still be in the air, actually.
No, we're recording this on a Wednesday night, Australian time, so this time next week we'll be somewhere over the Pacific.
We will, yeah. Probably eating food, I hope.
Probably eating prawns on the flight.
Very, very
Likely.
Yes, Dr. Rachie and I and our reporter Kylie Sturgis all the way from Perth are heading for DragonCon. Now, I think, Dr. Rachie, you have a few details. If listeners are coming to DragonCon, please come up and say hello. I mean, we really love to meet you and talk with you, especially when you tell us how good Dr. Rachie's reports are.
And especially when you tell us how funny Richard's jokes are, in fact, as well.
No one's going to say that.
No, and in fact, can I just mention as an aside, one of our good blogging friends, Crispy and Jago, recently did a blog post about your jokes, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
He Simpsonised a few famous skeptical people. You guys saw this, didn't you, on his blog?
Yes.
He did Rebecca Watson, Brian
Tim
Dunning, Tim Minchin,
Steve Novella, Randy,
Simon Singh, Randy.
Field Plate.
And Richard Saunders,
And me.
Ariane Shireen, and he mentioned everyone he assigned everyone a special power. Now, what did he assign you, Richard?
I'm not saying.
I believe it was piss poor jokes, in fact.
I can't imagine I can't imagine why he said that.
Right. Well, anyway,
Getting back to Dragon Con.
Back to Dragon Con. Yes, we did receive the Pocket program guide today, which is now available on the website. If you search for Dragon Con, you can find that. And it's designed for big pockets.
Very big pockets.
Because it's 140-something pages long.
Yeah.
Which gives you an idea, listeners, of how big Dragon Con is as an event. But the Skeptic Zone will be part of 3 tracks. Mm-hmm. The Skep track, obviously, the Science track, and also the Silk Road track, which is Asian culture and origami.
And and I'll be taking part in 3 origami panels, in fact. And if listeners go to the Dragon Con website or look for Silk Road, I think I'm doing one about Pegasus.
You're doing one called Pigs Might Fly on Sunday at 10 a.m.
Right.
You're doing one called Origami Round Robin on Sunday at 11:30 a.m. And then on Monday at 11:30 you're doing Origami Open Fold.
Excellent. I remember last year I had such an enormously good time teaching people how to make birds and animals and all sorts of things. I really love it. So if you're coming along to Dragon Con and you can spare those times, come along. I'd love to see you.
Mm. Well, also, as part of the Skep track, Richard, we're doing a couple of things as well. On the Friday at 4 o'clock, I'm doing my own presentation called Quackery and Media Commentary, which is going to be the Dr. Rachie treatment of some things that I like to talk about.
Excellent.
And then you and I, on the Saturday at 5:30, are doing our Mystery Investigators show.
Yes, the Mystery Investigators show. And in fact, listeners in Sydney, as soon as you listen to the Skeptic Zone, hopefully you're listening to it on Friday when it's uploaded. If you come to the ABC in Ultimo, you'll see Dr. Rachie and I performing our Mystery Investigator show all day.
All day,
yes.
Yeah. And that's for the Ultimo Science Festival, which is part of New South Wales Science Week.
So it's the 29th
of
August. Saturday, ABC in Ultimo building. Walk right in and you can come and say hello to Dr. Rachie and myself.
We'll be there from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m.
Great.
And last year we did 9 shows, Richard. So let's see if we can beat that record this year. And then we went home and collapsed, I think, didn't we?
And you can see Dr. Rachie stand on my back on a bed of nails.
9 times, listeners.
9 times.
And if you come and cheer, I might do it 10 times.
Getting back to Dragon Con, however...
Yeah. So at 8:30 p.m. on Saturday night, we're doing a live recording of the Skeptic Zone with Kylie Sturgis.
And our special guests are...
George Harab. And Daniel Loxton.
Great.
And anyone else?
I think they're the 2 we've got lined up, but who knows?
Who knows?
No, it's Dragon Con, you never know. It could be...
William Shatner.
Who knows?
It could be.
Well, I doubt it. But
John Barrowman.
John Barrowman?
Maybe.
Leonard Nimoy?
Leonard Nimoy. In fact, every famous person is going to be marching in just to take part in our podcast.
I'm sure. There'll be a queue.
There'll be a queue.
Take a ticket,
Q.
people.
Q will be there too, you see. Sorry, Tricky.
What about that guy from Torchwood who everyone's in love with? What's his name?
John Barrow.
Oh, that's him! Oh, yes. I was thinking of the character's name, Captain
Jack.
Captain Jack, okay. I'll say it's Captain Jack.
Captain Jack.
I apologise.
You should see Diane's eyes at the moment.
Yeah.
Lighting
They're
up.
just popping out of her head.
Every time someone says Captain Jack, you see a little sparkle. You know.
And then finally on Sunday at 2:30 p.m. I'm doing a panel with Steve Novella on the science track called Influenza, Swine Flu and You.
And me.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And then there's one final panel at the end of Dragon Con where we also get together and do a skeptical goodbye, which I'm scheduled to be part of, but I think there'll probably be a lot of people just bouncing on there towards the end. And
I expect so.
Yeah, so
Now, you're in for a great time, Dr. H. I know this is your first Dragon Con.
It is.
And I remember before I went, Phil Plait said to me, you have no idea what you're in for. And it's true. Until you experience what Dragon Con's all about, you have no idea.
How many people come again? How many people attend Dragon Con?
Was it? What did you say, about 55,000?
Well, I've heard that about 55,000 pass through the doors across the course of the 3 days, because it's the Labor Day weekend in the States. So
That's
it's Monday's a
amazing.
holiday as well.
That's a lot of people.
And they're all, well, not all of them, but many people are dressed up in extravagant costumes.
Like Star Trek costumes?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Star Trek,
Oh, yeah.
Wookiees,
Angels, Star Wars,
Terminators.
A lot of cartoons. Not cartoons, comics. Anime. Indeed.
Really?
In fact, there's an anime track dedicated just to anime. There's a film festival.
You'd love it, you two. You should, honestly.
Stop making them jealous now,
sorry,
Richard.
I'm sorry. Now, one of the people, of course, we're going to be meeting up with in Dragon Con, a lot of good skeptics going to be there, of course, but we are particularly, Dr. H, particularly looking forward to meeting up with our good old friend Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.
We are, yes, we are.
And we can do Brian Dunning impersonations when we're there. That's quite fun. And we're
singing as well.
I'm Brian Dunning.
And he can do some singing too, that's right.
Yeah.
Now, there are a couple of things about Brian Dunning. One is he's sharing our room.
Yes, he is.
So we might get to interview him.
What, if we lock him in the bathroom?
That's right. I'm Brian Dunning and I'm in the bathroom. I can't get up. And I must also mention Brian Dunning's recently put up some new videos, a new series of quick video grabs he's doing called In Fact.
All right. Yeah.
Like Skeptoid, he's doing the video versions called In Fact. And his video channel is called Volleybrain.
Volleybrain.
Volley Brain on YouTube. Listeners, please check it out. He's got last time I looked, there were 3 new videos up there by Brian Dunning where he gives things the little Skeptoid treatment, but he's calling it In Fact. And it's
You can also get those on iTunes as well.
on iTunes.
Oh,
yes. Excellent.
as part
I didn't
of the
know that.
You can just do a search for Brian Dunning, they'll come up.
I will subscribe. That's excellent. He did one on the Mayan calendar and some others. So, listeners, yes, absolutely. On iTunes or on YouTube, check it out.
Now, speaking of YouTube, Richard, something happened to you earlier this week to do with YouTube, didn't it? What's up there?
What's
what
up,
happened?
Doc? Well, I've had a YouTube channel now for 4 or 5 years, a long time. And I was a director. In fact, I was invited to YouTube events and all sorts of things because I was getting a lot of hits. Unfortunately, though, I guess I crossed the line because the last video I put up was about a certain guy on TV. What was his name? Isaac Golden.
Isaac Golden.
Who appeared on a show called 9am, Channel 10 9am. And he was espousing the benefits of homeopathic vaccination. Oh, boy. So, as I do, I put it on YouTube. Well, Channel 10 didn't like that.
No.
And as a result, my whole channel's gone. Everything. Which, oh, well, that's life. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. It's a pity it's gone. The biggest pity it's gone is I had an account which let me put up unlimited time, so I could have half an hour on YouTube, which not many people can do. That's gone. But fair enough.
But that's a bad thing, but that's not the worst of it. In this particular instance, this is really almost a bit like censorship on the behalf of Channel 10, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of our listeners may have heard about this story, but if you haven't, it's a morning show called 9am with David and Kim. And it's one of those normal vacuous morning shows where they have someone selling, a vacuum cleaner or some special
It's an infomercial show with guests dotted through it.
It is. But on this particular occasion, they had a guy by the name of Isaac Golden who touts himself as a very highly respected researcher on the benefits of homeopathic vaccination. And they had on Professor Nikolai... Does anyone remember his surname?
I can't remember his name, no.
Petrovsky, sorry.
Petrovsky,
Nikolai Petrovsky, who is one of the scientists who was involved in the development of the swine flu vaccine. And then they had this guy called Isaac Golden in the studio who was saying we don't need to use swine flu vaccines, we can just use this homeopathic vaccine, and it's much cheaper, and we can get it out to millions of people in a much quicker time because it doesn't require safety testing, blah, blah, blah.
Comes straight from the tap.
Yeah. Now, the thing that was so credulous about this was that David and Kim, who are just, you know, these little TV presenters, they're not expected to know
I can't know everything.
the science, okay?
No,
but
not.
they didn't question this guy at all, and Nikolai Petrovsky, who was the scientist, just looked dumbstruck. You guys saw this on YouTube, didn't you, before it was pulled down? What was your opinion of his response?
It looked as though he didn't really know what was going to happen when he came in, and he was just floored by what this guy was saying. It's just so many things were wrong. He just didn't know where to start with his response, and ended up being stuck, and he didn't come off very well because of that.
Unfortunately, and Isaac Golden took advantage of the situation and came across as a fellow researcher.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He talked about this particular lab in Cuba that apparently developed this original homeopathic vaccine for leprosy, I think.
Was it?
I can't remember exactly what it was, but one of the researchers that is apparently associated with this institute is also working with Petrovsky. And so Golden managed to spin it around to say, well, I work with this guy and you've worked with him, therefore we're colleagues.
And we're bringing out a scientific paper and all the rest.
Yeah, we're bringing out a scientific paper internationally and nationally in the next few months, therefore we're pretty much on the same page.
Nobody there to say, hang on a second, you're talking about water, aren't you?
Yes.
You know, the Professor Petrovsky was not ready or doesn't know that angle of it. The two presenters, well, they're just presenters. They don't know what we know. So
but I have to say also, I mean, Kim, surely she must have some scientific knowledge. But at one point she said, oh, so how does this then work if it's like a virus? When asking about the vaccine.
Was she asking that to the homeopathist? I can't remember.
I can't remember either, but it doesn't matter who she was asking it to.
Yeah.
Behind that question is a complete lack of knowledge of what a vaccine is.
Yeah.
A vaccine is against a virus. And she was saying, oh, well, then how does it work if it's against a virus? Like, why? Because,
it's a pity. It's a pity that there was nobody on there to counter what he was saying and just say absolutely from the beginning, hang on, you're talking about water. What are you doing? This is rubbish. This is debunked ancient rubbish. And so it went out, and a lot of people would have thought that this was interesting information that they should hear. And why aren't the government spending a fraction of the cost to vaccinate the whole population with homeopathy?
Yeah. Well, this is the good thing, though, because you happen to be watching television and you happen to catch it and record it and stick it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people saw it, and a lot of people that I know wrote letters to the station complaining immediately and saying, this is dangerous, this is irresponsible of you.
I guess Channel 10 got the message because they cancelled my YouTube account.
Well, yeah, so, I mean...
a small price to pay. A small price to pay. Now, the thing is, and we were just discussing this earlier...
Yes.
It's been pulled. I know other people have it, but more importantly, we can transcribe it.
I know someone who did write to Media Watch, which is sort of our media watchdog program, and they sort of got a fairly automated response to saying, we might look into it, thank you for your feedback.
That's all I've received so far as well.
Oh, did you write to Media Watch too? Okay.
So RIP my old YouTube account. I'm not bothered. I'm not going to go through and put my case. I mean, I had a lot of videos up there from TV shows. Let's face it, a lot of people do. So I'm the last person to run around saying, oh, this is unfair. But I've got a new one.
Oh, what is it, Richard?
Oh, yes.
So we can all subscribe.
Skeptic Zone Podcast.
Skeptic Zone Podcast.
That's it. My new YouTube channel is Skeptic Zone Podcast, and the first video I uploaded was how to fold origami Pegasus. Because when they took down my channel, all that went. All the old tank podcasts have gone. So I've got to find somewhere to house those, and all my old...
Did they warn you at all? Just out of curiosity?
Well, they did. You see, years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, Uri Geller whinged and had something put down, because I had a clip which featured Uri Geller, and I didn't think much of it. And a couple of years later, Benny Hinn went on a rampage through YouTube, or his lawyers, and they had everything removed. And I had a clip that featured Benny Hinn. It wasn't his clip. It didn't matter. And I didn't think much of it. And years went by, and of course this was the third strike. Bam.
3 strikes, you're out.
And my whole account disappeared.
YouTube prefer just to pull things and then wait for people to go, well, hang on, that was legitimate before they start looking into it.
So don't worry, listeners. Don't write into YouTube and say, what are you doing? I don't care. I've got a new... channel up, and I'll put up
No, what you should
videos.
do in protest is transcribe the segment and put it on your blog
Yeah.
and Twitter it and send it to as many people as you can,
Yeah.
because this smells a bit to me of Channel 10 trying to silence it.
Well, not particularly. Quite often what TV networks do is they send short little snippets of the segment to YouTube. They encode that up and then search all the other videos for things that look like that little snippet.
Really?
It's a bit of an automated process these days.
Although in this
That's
case...
especially how they go after the music videos.
In this case, I think
So
it was
it may have been
because...
something similar, or it may have been Channel 10. There's no way to tell.
I would hazard a guess and say in this case it's because of the flood of emails they would have got.
But didn't you say that it's on their website somewhere? Did you say that?
I saw...
Attention please members and guests, the time is now 9:30pm and at this time the club's underage policy is in place. Could all adults with minors in their company please escort them from the premises? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that someone commented that clip was on the 9am website. I didn't find it, but I saw other clips with that same bloke talking about homeopaphy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Channel 10 doesn't care that they're just spouting misinformation to young parents who are home at that time of the day watching their nonsense, no? Not concerned about that? Fine.
No. Don't say it like that. They don't know that they're spouting misinformation.
That's irrelevant. They should be doing their research.
I agree, but don't
They
say,
have a responsibility to not spout this nonsense.
Don't say they don't care. It implies that they know they're spouting nonsense. Now, they might know it's nonsense, but
I will sue me, Channel 10.
I probably think that they simply just don't know they're spouting nonsense.
I don't care. They should do their research. If you want to,
I agree with you. Yeah. They should do.
Sue me for saying that. I don't care.
I'm going to agree with you, Rachel.
They're a national broadcaster. They have that obligation.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Good point. Especially when they're talking about vaccinating children with water.
Exactly.
So that was all very interesting this week for me. Wow, how about that? Goodbye, old YouTube channel. Now I'm looking at my notes. Dr. Rachel, you've got a paper in front of you.
I do. I have an old-fashioned newspaper, listeners. Listen to that. We've heard that for a while.
I remember
Isn't that
those.
what they had, a couple of thousand years ago?
Yeah, well, and this one is also a broadsheet, which is the one that's super, super big that you can't read on the bus. You know those ones?
Yeah.
That you can wrap your fish and chips in. This is our local sort of left-wing press, I guess, in a sense, isn't it? Would you call it left-wing?
They vary all over the place.
Yeah, okay. Well,
Even
then
the same reporters vary from right to left.
But it is the Sydney broadsheet.
it's the Sydney broadsheet. It's called the Sydney Morning Herald. It's considered to be a sort of, fairly erudite newspaper, isn't it? So maybe a bit like The Guardian, possibly. It's certainly not trash with page 3 pictures.
No.
Anyway, the front page of the paper a couple of days ago...
Attention members and guests, could Maria Costa please make your way to reception? Maria Costa, could you please make your way to reception? Thank you.
Go on, Maria, hurry up. Go on, Rachel.
I was quite surprised today to find that the newspaper with splashed across the front page in big headlines was an investigation about a sex clinic in New South Wales. And anyone who... Sorry?
Australian Medical Institute.
It's Australia-wide, is it?
Yes.
Oh.
Advanced Medical Institute.
Well, it's known as the Advanced Medical Institute, and we've become quite used to their billboards in this part of the country. The huge, huge billboards that say have longer-lasting sex in huge letters on a big yellow background with this number, and it's basically nasal delivery technology, which is supposed to correct impotency, essentially, right? There have been a string of complaints over a very long time about the billboards, first of all.
And the radio ads.
Yes.
A lot of
The
people
radio ads
complain
too.
about radio ads, yeah.
Okay, yeah. People were saying that they were offended by them.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that they got around this was they covered up any sort of offensive words with censored. So they went from have longer-lasting sex to have longer-lasting censored. That apparently managed to get around the loopholes of the Advertising Standards Bureau or whoever was, overseeing that. But anyway, also a few months ago, there was an investigation into their unethical practices in terms of their offering. Their alleged unethical practices. And the allegedly using unproved medical claims to treat impotency.
Alleged impotency.
No, I think that there is evidence for the
Let's just make every second word alleged.
I think so.
However,
hey, I've been taken to the clinics once this week by the internet, I'd say.
Allegedly, of course.
allegedly, YouTube took down your account.
Yeah.
However, there was an injunction taken out by the Advanced Medical Institute in June to prevent people from publicising or writing about the investigation that they were undergoing at the time. But just a couple of days ago, the Supreme Court allowed the Sydney Morning Herald, this nice piece of newspaper, to see parts of the investigation because they deemed that it was necessary for the public to know what was going on. And it turns out these people, well, I'll just quote here from a series of health experts who overlooked their practices. They called them pernicious, nasty, coercive and deplorable, and said that their practices were unethical and were based on unproved medical claims.
Yeah.
So apparently the guy who's the chief executive is a guy named Jack Weissman, and he's known as a medical entrepreneur, which doesn't sound particularly...
That's red flags.
It's very red flag, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, you heard an interview with this guy this morning.
They were
Richard,
interviewed
didn't
on
you?
radio this morning, and the announcer put the concerns as mentioned in the paper. And the guy you just mentioned...
yeah, Jack Weissman.
Yeah, he answered a few questions, but most questions were answered by their legal guy.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
really?
they were very good at deflecting and answering
Yes.
questions.
I thought he was very good too, actually.
You heard
answering
that?
the questions. I did hear
Yeah.
Mm.
And but he said, so the announcer, Mike Carlton, said, but what about this? You've been condemned by these people who are researchers and leaders in this field. And they said, oh, well, they obviously haven't seen the latest research. And which didn't leave Mike Carlton anywhere to go, you see. It was very clever.
Well, actually, one of those leading researchers is a guy by the name of David Handelsman, and I, in fact, know him. He works in the Department of Andrology at Concord Hospital, so he works with androgens and male hormones. And he called their practices a carefully constructed legal fiction. So it's interesting, actually, spotted throughout this article, which is very, very critical of what they're doing and basically alerting the public to stay well away. They use the word pernicious 3 times. They use the word scarifying.
One of my favourite words.
Scarifying, yeah.
Favourite words.
Now that it exists in the paper.
Scarifying.
Yeah, they also mentioned...
Sounds like a name of a 70s rock group.
scarifying.
And now with their latest hit, oh, what's that over there? It's scarifying.
So this...
Was that one of your bad jokes, Richard?
No, that was a good one.
Oh, was it?
Come on, Rachel. Get me out of this hole.
Apparently they... I can't even follow that. The AMI, Australian Medical... What are they called again? Advanced Medical Institute. They apparently have been allegedly signed people up to long-term contracts which cost thousands of dollars. And this was termed pernicious, nasty and unethical. There's pernicious again. That's the 3rd time it's in here. Do you think the journo's trying to make a point?
Good heavens.
And apparently they also did things like prescribe penile injections to a 17-year-old.
What?
Who ended up with priapisms, which is basically prolonged erections, who then had to seek other medical assistance.
17-year-olds like that anyway?
See, now, Richard, that's a good joke.
Are you saying correlation doesn't equal causation?
Allegedly, I am.
Richard, did you hear also this morning during the interview? Remember that Carlton talked about assessment?
Vaguely.
How can you diagnose over the phone? And he said,
Yes, he was saying, how can they diagnose over the phone?
Because they do diagnose over the phone.
That's right,
Yeah.
and they say all the treatment is the same. So all the causes are the same, so you have exactly the same.
And Carlton was worried about...
Quite similar to some other form of medication that we know about.
Yeah, Viagra.
I was thinking more
No,
like
that
a
works.
water-based thing.
homeopathy.
Yeah.
And,
any woo.
and Mike Carlton was quite concerned because, well, sometimes it's psychological, sometimes it's this,
That's
sometimes
right.
it's that, yeah.
That's right.
Anyway, it's good to see that Because I'm sick of those posters too. They're terrible.
Yeah, but it's not even about those posters. It's about people being signed up.
No, I
losing
agree,
thousands of dollars and not
but
getting their problem fixed.
I'm also...
But the thing is, this nasal delivery technology has been debunked many times. Yeah. It's been through court before, through a different company.
I'd say I don't think this company's going to survive this now. This is pretty bad.
This guy used to own another company called the On Clinic. I don't know if you remember them. And they have also been reported to the Healthcare Complaints Commission in the past.
Yeah.
And so maybe they were told to shut down and they just went away and started up something else.
Yeah, because I do remember hearing about the On Clinic before, so I thought they were two separate companies.
No, this guy, Professor Jack Weisman, owns this company too called On Clinic. That was his previous company.
They say to make it sound like it was a different company, because that's what I thought they were.
Well, it says here that it was a Weisman company called On Clinic.
Yeah.
So if that's correct, then...
The thing is, because there's so much money in this business, even if this is shut down, they'll just open up another business.
Well, even if this is shut down, they still walk away wealthy men.
That's right.
Well, this is a quote from Mr. Doyle. I'm not quite sure who he is, but he's associated with the company, I think. But anyway, this is the quote. "We are a commercial enterprise and we are entitled to do whatever we wish to as long as we comply with the law." So there you go. I mean, that's basically saying if we can get a loophole and get around it, then we're a commercial enterprise, stuff people's health.
Anyway, it's good to see that this has come to the attention of the general public, because they advertise quite heavily, as we know, on the billboards and on radio and on television, in fact.
Everywhere, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Raichi, once again. Thank you very much, Jason, for coming along. And Diane?
No problem, Richard.
No problem. And until next time, and I think we'll probably do a think tank from Atlanta.
I think we should, yeah.
I think we'll arrange it somehow.
I think we should be able to do that.
Why not? Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
We're getting ready for DragonCon.
Richard, I'm starting to feel like Princess Leia with one too many walking carpets in a way.
Why? What's wrong?
I just got run over by sodding Davros at the check-in terminal. Do you know how slowly Davros moves? He did that on purpose.
Yeah, okay, sure. Well, we'll be representing the Skeptic track and the Science track at DragonCon Atlanta. You can see me, Dr. Raichi, Kylie Sturgis, Dr. Steve Roberts, and Dr. Martin Bridgestock working and being sciencey and skeptical. Don't forget, there's a special Mystery Investigator show for everybody, including the kids, a live show of the Skeptic Zone, and even origami talks by me over on the Silk Road track.
Yeah? Well, Mua dig this, you bloody sandworm!
And I think Kylie is starting an interstellar war in the lobby, if you'd like to join.
Sorry, Richard, the Klingons have decided to launch an attack on Red Dwarf. I had to say something.
That's what it was, huh?
Ooh, are you really going to dress up as Captain Jack Harkness?
Oh, well, I was thinking.
Oh, it suits you. Really does. Nice idea.
Catch you all from Thursday to Monday at DragonCon.
I'm Kylie Sturgis, and I'm talking to Leanne Rubbs. Leanne is the gifted and talented coordinator and teacher of philosophy and ethics at Hale School, an all-boys school in Western Australia. In 2007, she and Matthew Willis created the Philosophathon. The Philosophathon is a community of inquiry competition, a critical thinking challenge for high school students. Using the community of inquiry model, which has its origins in Montclair State, New Jersey, USA, it is also incorporated in the Philosophy and Ethics program for years 11 and 12 in Western Australia. The Philosophathon is open for years 8 to 12 in the high school years. Not only does it challenge the students, but it also challenges many preconceptions about how to get critical thinking into schools.
I'm here with Leanne in a gorgeous building. Why are we here, Leanne? To discuss the Philosophathon. And this seems to be the perfect place for it.
It really is. Absolutely.
It's Hale School, and this happens to be your room.
This is my room. This is the room where great, deep thoughts are thought.
So
It's wonderful.
So what sort of classes require great deep thoughts?
Well, I'm the Challenge Program Coordinator here, and that means at Hale School, Gifted and Talented Education, accommodating the needs of the very bright, very capable students in our midst. Not necessarily our high performers. These are the lads that we've been able to identify as having high intelligence quotients and who have special needs for differentiation as a result. The focus for me is very much higher order thinking skills because that's what gifted children need. So you'll notice the blackboard over there with a huge discussion about God and existentialism. And so, that's the sort of thing that happens around here a lot. We have these very interesting discussions about philosophy.
Now, one of the things people might know is that Hale School is also a religious school as well.
It is.
Yes. And so this does not conflict with perhaps the way the school is run.
Not at all. When you're employed here at Hale, you are asked to support the ethos of the school, and I have absolutely, complete commitment to that. I'm completely committed to the school's ethos as Christianity. Christianity is one of the great philosophies. There are a number of others. So it's a matter of exposing the boys to all the philosophical concepts out there and encouraging them to see huge value in the Christian philosophy.
And certainly questioning it and investigating it and learning it is all part of that.
All part of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Now, we're not just here because you teach and help these students with their needs as gifted and talented students. We met when we were doing PD for Philosophy and Ethics, which is a new course, or fairly new course. What does that mean for you as a teacher?
I've been very involved in the development of philosophy and ethics in WA because I see the development of a rational society as, an answer, if you like, to the world's problems. The more we encourage people to think rationally, the less likely we are to be influenced by fads of thinking. And we encourage students to think their way through and reason their way through great lines of thought or logical progressions of argument. We're less likely to be affected by concepts like racism and gender politics and those sorts of things. The new course deals with all the development of philosophy and philosophical thought, logical reasoning, and so on. And I've been really involved in the development of that here at Hale. And our big interest was that we wanted to be one of the first schools that implemented this new course. Now, the great difficulty with that is all the other courses have histories. This course did not have a history. It had no established precedent in the way that you would test the skills taught during the course. And our concern was that the students had no concept of competition that linked with the idea of philosophy and ethics. So I came up with the idea of a competition that would enable students across the state who were participating in those courses to actually meet with each other and get a sense of competition.
What we have here is a philosophy competition called Philosothon.
The Philosothon, yes.
And it echoes what is currently being done in the classes for years 11 and 12 for philosophy and ethics in Western Australia.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't just a history competition like, name the dates that Plato lived and died. It involved something else, didn't it, part of the course, which is also quite new.
Well, the course works on the fundamental principle of a community of inquiry model. Now, the community of inquiry model brings together a group, a community, to debate, discuss, talk through, reason through a distinction that is presented to the group. It's a model that I'm very, very attached to. I think it's an absolutely fabulous model. And, of course, it's the model that is, taken for granted as a Socratorial model of discussion. We all mentally have this sort of image of Socrates and his students all sitting around in the square back in Athens, having this great long discussion. So the community of inquiry model fits that Socratorial model. And that was what we were wanting to work on. So the competition that I've been very involved in developing here works on that community of inquiry model. It's about bringing together communities of students who sit in a community circle and they've come prepared, having read trigger material or background reference material. They may have even had prior discussions on some of that information. But then they then come into these groups and they're meeting with other students from other schools across the state who they're not familiar with, they've never encountered before, and that community is facilitated or if you like, managed by a trained philosopher, a university student or someone who has volunteered to come from the philosophy community to facilitate that discussion and manage that discussion. Now, those facilitators are not there to guide it. They're not there to inform it. They're not there to tell students what to think. They're simply there to ensure that there's some order in the progression of the discussion around the community. And occasionally they might suggest a question, something to provoke the next line of discussion, something that might be another way of looking at what's been discussed. But in a general sense, it's not about the adult within the group imposing on the group. It's about the adult in the group facilitating the discussion further so it continues on. And that model has been very successful so far. And the model, of course, is completely embedded in the new course of study.
Now, if there were people out there who are intrigued by this notion of hoping that maybe they could start one like this in their own community, in their own town, maybe their own state, do they necessarily have to have the philosophy and ethics course in their school in order to do this?
No, absolutely not. There's no requirement whatsoever to do that. In fact, we initiated the competition the year before the course got going. And that was a deliberate plan on my behalf to start preparing our school community for the implementation of the new course of study.
Very clever. Very, very clever.
We were trying to advantage our students.
Nicely done, yeah.
So we initiated the philosophy club, and within the philosophy club we started the community of inquiry model to start preparing our year 8, 9s and 10s for the year 11 and 12 courses that were to roll out of the Curriculum Council. And that the club environment enabled us to start developing the skills and understandings necessary to use in the upper school course. Then we discovered that within the community we were finding the same sorts of reasoning, the same sorts of logic being provided week in, week out. And we thought it was time to challenge our boys a bit. So we developed a partnership with St Hilda's Philosophers in Action Club, and bringing the boys and the girls together was interesting in itself. And we saw the benefit of the cross-gender mix. All of a sudden, the argument shifted and the girls brought a completely different perspective to the discussion than our boys had previously enjoyed. So if we thought, okay, well, if that works, let's take it out into the state. And that's where the idea of the competition came. And, of course, as you know, we've now expanded to the eastern states. So schools in the eastern states are now running their versions of the Philosophathon. We've had interest from Southeast Asia. So we're really hoping in the long term. And Matthew Wills, who is our head of religion, ethics and philosophy here at Hale, he and I work very much as a team. We have a website for the Philosophathon, which people can access. And we're really hoping that in the long term that we might make a worldwide movement and encourage young people right across the world to participate in philosophical communities of inquiry.
I've had inquiries by people, in fact, not as students, but as hopeful teachers.
Yes.
Or as parents who want to facilitate, who want to be able to encourage. One of the things that people might not know about this particular model, the community of inquiry, it's not Australian, is it? It is, in fact, American.
It is an American model. Yes, absolutely. But the Curriculum Council, in preparing the course, worked, of course, with experts in the area and had very many academics who advised in the development of the course. We work very closely, as you know, with the Philosophathon, with all of our universities in WA. So all of the universities are represented in that venue because they all send us judges, and we draw the facilitators from that same pool. So this is very much across the educational community as a whole, and because of that, we are getting current thinking in philosophy from the academic area being brought down and into the school environment and influencing the way the competition develops and evolves.
Have you noticed many students going on, perhaps, now that time has passed, to consider doing philosophy at university level?
Definitely.
Yeah.
We've had feedback from the University of Western Australia already Dr. Nick Damjanovic is one of our judges, both here, and Dr. Joe Namo of Notre Dame University have both commented to me that, there has been interest at both the universities as a direct result of students graduating from the Philosophathon. And so our students have become a great deal more interested in philosophy at school because it's now leading, very powerfully into undergraduate courses at UWA, which is just fabulous. But we're also finding it the other way around. We're finding our students who have gone on and who are now studying at UWA, who have actively elected to do philosophy units either as majors or minors in their courses of study, are coming back and participating at the high school level with our clubs, in our philosophy camp that we run each year, with the Philosophathon, actively participating because they're coming back and telling our upper school students and our club within the school how valuable those skills are. So they're finding that those skills are useful no matter what their course of study.
It'd be interesting to see if many of them go on to become philosophy teachers themselves and maybe come back to teach philosophy and
ethics. I've got my fingers crossed.
Yeah. So people are interested in learning more, particularly about the community of inquiry method. One place they can go is the Montclair State University because it's Matthew Lipman's method.
It is.
Isn't it? That has international ramifications. I believe it's still being tested, however, in terms of its efficacy, and yet we do know certain impacts that it has.
Absolutely. And there is some evidence to suggest that the development of the model is valuable in terms of the development of social skills within students as well. Sitting in a community of inquiry model and participating in active, challenging debate where opinions and ideas, concepts are being challenged and sometimes quite emotively so. Students can get very, very stressed and very attached to their opinion or their particular point of argument. In that being controlled and guided as part of a community of inquiry model, those students are learning appropriate social ways to discuss volatile issues within society without it becoming a source of contention.
I've had people say to me, it's absolutely, it wouldn't be wonderful we have critical thinking classes and so forth, and I stand back and say, we have classes, we're doing it, and yet it doesn't seem to be picked up. What do you think might be some of the factors?
And that's a very interesting point, because recently I encountered a professional philosopher who is involved with the WA School of Philosophy and works constantly with adults and with business. And I met this person on a social level and was immediately confronted by the question, why aren't we doing this in schools? And my answer was, we are doing it in schools. And even within our community of philosophers in this state, there was a very low understanding, if you like, amongst people who view themselves as professional philosophers active in the business world, despite the work that the Australian Philosophers in Schools Association has been doing for some time. We've been working so hard to develop this in schools and working to bridge universities and school communities so that we are building these connections, these relationships. But there's still this perception that there's very little happening in schools. On the ground in schools, there's a lot happening. The trick is to get it out. Philosophy still has a fringe factor involved in Australian society. We look at philosophy as an elitist course of study rather than seeing it as something that's generally applicable. And that's bizarre in itself, because philosophy is about good thinking. It's about effective thinking. And surely that should be the basis of everything.
Often I've had people say to me, there should be more critical thinking classes in the sciences, for example.
Yes.
And yet we can see it in the curriculum. If you do take out a copy of curriculum maps here in Western Australia, you can see how it's pointing out the scientific method. Yes, indeed, it is being taught and so forth. So
we've noticed this ourselves, because I have a club here at Hale which runs on Tuesdays and Thursdays at lunchtimes. We have a very active community of boys who come and participate in that club in philosophical discussion, and we've invited our heads of curriculum to come and address that group. That in itself is valuable within the school, because what we're doing is explaining how philosophy is embedded in every subject area, and the more that we can do this, the more that we embed logical, rational thought.
And I guess some people might be thinking to themselves, well, that's Hale School. They have access to wonderful teachers. They have facilities and so forth. And yet it takes communication. This could quite easily happen in a public school.
As we know.
As we've said, because we have the philosophy and ethics courses, not just a private school course only taught to those year 11 and 12s.
And, we've had 2 years in a row great interest from the state school system in terms of participating in the Philosophathon. Australian Senior High School performed last year, and really distinguished themselves. By no means is it the elite private schools by any means. We're looking very much at this being across the system approach, which is the way it should be.
Very open-armed, everyone.
Very much so.
So to find out more, to ask you more questions, as I'm certain people listening to this are going to be very intrigued, where can people go?
Well, they can come to us. We do have a website, philosophon.org. That's it. And that allows you to contact us, and we will respond to that website and give you whatever help and support that we can. But the website's extremely comprehensive. Matthew Wills maintains that website, and that's where all the resources are, so that any school that is interested, not necessarily in participating this year, but that would like to get an idea of what's involved, that would be a good spot to start, because you can go there and have a look at all the resources that the teams are using to prepare the debates for this year. The debate topics are all up there. Last year's debate topics are up there to give you an idea of what competition faced last year. There are photographs online to give you an idea of the sorts of layout of a community of inquiry. And we invite observers. So if you would like to come and just see what we're doing, you're very welcome. Just let me know so that I can make sure that we've got enough tea and coffee for everybody.
and that includes parents as well, and students.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, we go out of our way to ensure that people who are interested and want to be involved but would just like to come and have a look this year. I will.
I'll be there this year.
You will be.
I will be. I shall indeed. And I'll be
Absolutely.
encouraging as many people as I can. Thank you very much, Leanne, for this
You're
opportunity.
welcome. Pleasure.
If you head to philosothon.org, you'll discover that at Ascham College in Sydney South, the next Philosothon is on Thursday, September the 10th. At Hale School, it is being held on Wednesday, October the 28th, and contact details are on the site. Criticalteaching.org will be represented at DragonCon this year, and you can find out about the Association for the Philosophy in Schools at philosophywa.com.
Well, thank you for downloading this episode of the Skeptic Zone. Now, those of you who are heading for Dragon Con in Atlanta, well, you know where to find us. Please come up and say hello. Next week's episode, we have an interview with Margaret Kitson from Queensland, all about her life in skepticism and a bit about the upcoming Australian Skeptics National Convention. Until then, it's goodbye from Richard Saunders from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.